ministre, au sujet de Gaza, quand l'évacuation des premiers Canadiens, comment expliquer qu'il n'y a pas eu de Canadiens d'évacuer aujourd'hui?
Tout d'abord, mettons tout au clair, les attaques terroristes de Hamas sont inacceptables et abhorrentes et l'Israël a le droit de se défendre. Mais quel sera le prix de la justice quand on regarde que tous les innocents palestiniens sont en train d'être affectés? On est extrêmement préoccupé par la violence, par la situation catastrophique qui a un si grand impact, particulièrement sur les enfants. C'est pour ça qu'on est en train d'appeler pour des pauses humanitaires. On est en train de pousser pour avoir plus d'aide humanitaire, se rendre, et pas juste de l'aide humanitaire, mais de l'eau, de l'électricité, se rendre à la population de Gaza parce qu'on est extrêmement préoccupé par cette situation. On doit voir la libération des otages, on doit voir les Canadiens et leurs familles sortir de Gaza. On est encouragé par l'activité autour de la barrière de Rafah, mais il faut que ça aille plus vite, il faut que plus de gens puissent sortir. We, of course, continue to unequivocally condemn Hamas's abhorrent terrorism, and Israel has the right to defend itself. But the price of justice cannot be the continued suffering of all Palestinian civilians. We are deeply concerned by the catastrophic impact on the population in Gaza, particularly on children, which is why we are calling for humanitarian aid and water and fuel to flow into Gaza. We're calling on humanitarian pauses to allow that to happen. We're calling on the liberation of hostages, on aid to flow in, and on Canadians and their families to get out of Gaza through the Rafah crossing. We are hearing positive things. We are hearing positive news around movement at the Rafah crossing, and we are trying to encourage and make sure that more people, that indeed all foreign nationals, are
Do you know why? Do you know why?
C'est quelque chose qu'on est en train de regarder.
Do you want to fight the next election on a carbon tax?
I think Canadians are deeply, deeply concerned about the need to continue to fight climate change in ways that makes life more affordable for them. That has been at the heart of what we've been doing for 8 years, with a plan that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians with the carbon price rebate, and is actually bending our curve and going to reach our emissions targets. So we're going to continue to fight climate change and build a strong economy while we make life more affordable for Canadians. And one of the ways we're doing that is by working with provinces that are willing to deliver free heat pumps to low-income Canadians that are using heating oil, because home heating oil is dirtier than other forms of carbon heating. Home heating oil is more expensive than other forms of heat, and home heating oil is disproportionately relied upon by lower-income Canadians in rural areas across the country who need more support. That's what we're doing, and that is absolutely something I am going to continue to stand for unequivocally, while Mr. Poilievre has no plan to fight climate change and therefore no plan for the economy.
S'il n'y a pas de consortium pour la construction du tramway à Québec, est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral va répondre présent pour contribuer à ce projet?
Si je comprends bien, M. Marchand est en train de parler de ça en ce moment, donc on va lui laisser le temps de terminer son point de presse, répondre aux questions, puis pas longtemps après, on aura notre propre réaction.
Mais ça vous déçoit quand même? Ça semble être encore un délai.
Bien, à nouveau, là, je sais que c'est une information qui est très récente, que moi j'ai besoin de voir et de comprendre aussi bien que tout le monde, et quand ce sera le cas, là, bien, je pourrai réagir utilement.
Au niveau des dépassements, 10 à 13 milliards, pensez quoi de ça?
À nouveau, faut laisser le temps à monsieur Marchand de tout expliquer. J'ai mon équipe qui écoute attentivement, puis je serai là pour répondre quand ce sera possible.
Sur l'immigration.
Pierre Poilievre today announced that they're putting forward a motion to extend the home heating oil carbon tax break to all Canadians. Do you agree with that? Are your constituents wanting a break on their home heat?
Well, the price on pollution puts more money in the pockets of middle-class Canadians everywhere where the federal plan applies. In Quebec, it's a different system, so it doesn't work the same way. But outside of Quebec and British Columbia, middle-class Canadians get more money in their pockets, regardless of what type of home heating they may use. Now, we know it's more difficult for those that use oil to heat their home, and that's why we have announced what we announced last week. But in all cases, including for those that use oil, the price on pollution puts more money in their pockets.
Quebecers would like to see money now, though, right? In a form, a tax break that they can actually put in their pocket. Wouldn't that that be good for politics? That would be good for your constituents?
In Quebec, it's a bit different because we have electricity, which the vast majority of
People are
Quebecers.
still, those bills still hurt, though. Like, this is all heat, not just...
No, of course, food, the price of food, the price of rent, that's a good point. That's why we have the Canada Child Benefit. That's why we have the grocery rebate. That's why we are increasing benefits to seniors. And that's why we're investing in more affordable housing construction. So these are all actions that impact Quebecers as well as other Canadians.
What would you like to see about the immigration numbers? There are new targets being announced. Would you like to see those immigrant numbers go up or down?
We'll know about them in a short while. The objective is to recognize the pressure, the pressure on the workforce. We need more workers, including in the construction sector, coming into Canada. We also need to acknowledge that we need to host those workers in an appropriate manner, making sure they have appropriate, affordable housing. Merci, les gars.
Conservatives plan to bring a motion calling on the government to withdraw the carbon price from all home heating fuel until the next election. Have the Liberals considered at all whether you would do that?
I think the Prime Minister has been very clear that this was the only exclusion. There's a big difference between home heating oil and other means in which to heat your home. Home heating oil is much more expensive than other forms like natural gas, for example. It disproportionately impacts lower income Canadians and has a disproportionate impact in Atlantic Canada. But I think we can see right across the country that the cost of the price on pollution when it comes to natural gas is factored into the climate action incentive, and so people get that money back that they've paid up front. So
Wasn't that also true of home heating oil then?
Well, home heating oil, the cost has increased dramatically with the cost of oil as well. There's more pollution, but we also know that we need to transition people off of it. So that's why not only has the price on pollution been removed from home heating oil, but we also have this new program in place to help Canadians transition to heat pumps so that they can save thousands of dollars a year when it comes to heating their homes.
So it's safe to believe the Liberals will vote no to this motion?
The Prime Minister has been very clear that this is the only exemption that we're considering.
Are we going to see pharmacare legislation tabled and passed by the end of this year? Are you so confident that can...
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, pharmacare legislation.
Pharmacare legislation, yes.
Are we still going to see this tabled and passed by the end of this year? And November, December, not a lot of time.
I can tell you that we're working very hard on it. I have full confidence that we're going to continue to move forward. And I think there are really good conversations happening between the Liberals and the NDP, but we will be tabling something.
Confidence that it will pass by the end of this year?
I think we got to see how quickly we can get this legislation introduced, but I think the conversations are going in the right direction, and I think we're going to have something really positive on the table for Canadians.
So we'll have to see if we can get this
We have,
done.
I think, 5.5 weeks left in the parliamentary session, so we will get this done. I have full confidence of that, but as I said, those conversations are ongoing, and they're very productive right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you concerned?
Nouvelles cibles d'immigration francophone qui seront annoncées aujourd'hui, M. Boissonault?
Mais j'attends les nouvelles avec impatience. C'est le travail de M. Miller.
Et quand on parle de 6 %, là, les demandes, c'est 12.
Mais juste peut-être que sur les demandes de FCFA, et ce que le ministre Miller et moi avons dit très clairement, c'est qu'on veut rétablir le poids démographique des francophones à travers le pays. Et ça, c'est un pourcentage de 6,1 depuis 1971. Et donc, c'est important que les cibles ou le cible soit réalisable et aussi réaliste, qui va nous aider à rétablir le poids démographique.
Are you concerned at all about the complaints coming out of Western Canada that they're being left out of this home heating oil or the exemption for home heat from the carbon price? Should natural gas be added to that?
No, I'm not concerned at all, but I do hear the concerns, and I think what we need to say very clearly is if Premier Smith and Premier Moe want people to have access to home heating oil, they can join on the same program that Nova Scotia, PEI, and Newfoundland have done. And if we look at the greenhouse gas emissions of heating oil versus natural gas, it's double, and the price of heating oil is 4 times that of natural gas. And if we take a look at exemptions that Alberta has had, for example, in carbon pricing and in getting to net zero, right now, natural gas plants that provide our electricity are grandfathered in to be able to be run on natural gas for 20 years after they've started. And so there are exemptions in the plan that exist across the country. And what we've done with Atlantic Canada is a 3-year plan to get people off home heating oil onto heat pumps, which will permanently reduce their greenhouse gas emission. And we're talking about some of the lowest income Canadians who live in an area of energy poverty, which means they don't have any choices. And back home, we do have more choices.
Do you agree with Minister Hutchings that if there were more Liberals in Alberta, there would be more people advocating?
You know, that's a question you can ask Minister Hutchings. What I will say is I'll never say to any part of the country the way they vote. I work very hard for every vote that I get in my riding. And would I like to see more Liberals over time? Absolutely. What we're talking about right now is governing for all Canadians.
Mr. Poilievre just announced that they're going to put forward a motion to extend the home heating carbon tax rate to all Canadians. Do you think that should be done? And he's also saying that they're going to fight the next election. They're going to call it the carbon tax election.
Well, I think that would be the 4th such election. I know it would be the 4th one that I fought. We now even have the Supreme Court basically saying that a price on pollution is not only legitimate, it's part of the framework that we have. So if Mr. Poilievre wants to fight the next election on that, I welcome it. And as for legislation or a motion that he plans to put on the floor, I'll comment on it when I say it. Thank you.
Contemplate the next steps that will be taken. If that matter ends up in some sort of judicial litigation process, we'll address it.
But just d'un point de vue, is it legal? Like, can we do that in Canada? Can a provincial government do that?
Yeah, I'm not giving legal advice right here. I'm not here to provide legal advice in terms of what the action the Saskatchewan legislature has taken. What I'd say is that we stand by the carbon pricing program, and we stand by the announcement that was just made. Thank you.
A little bit more exasperation about the slow trickle of aid into Gaza. Is Canada losing patience with the inability to get aid in there?
I think we've been very clear on the importance of aid getting in at a much faster pace, more constantly, more trucks. There have been 7 convoys so far, but it's certainly not enough. The number of trucks that are going in are not nearly enough to meet the urgent humanitarian needs of the civilians in Gaza.
So is Canada losing patience with Israel?
We are advocating for more access. We're working with regional partners. We're working with our trusted international organizations to pre-position aid. Some of it is getting through, but it's not enough, and we'll keep advocating for more access.
I'm curious about how you think this home heating oil thing is playing out. There seems to be some resentment in other parts of the country that Atlantic Canada is getting something that they're not.
So I think at the end of the day, we need to understand why home heating oil is being targeted by the Government of Canada to actually help Canadians make that transition. There is 1 million Canadians who still use home heating oil in this country. It is 4 times more expensive to heat your home versus traditional sources. These people are very vulnerable. There is a lot in Atlantic Canada, but what has not been really articulated is that there is over 250,000 households in Ontario that still use home heating oil. There's over 400,000 homes in Quebec that still use home heating oil. 30,000 in the prairies, yes, certainly less vulnerable on that particular front, but the government, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, started with going after coal, We're now going after home heating oil, and we're developing a national program that has already existed to help people make that transition because it's in their economic interest to do so, and it's also environmentally really important at the same time.
You don't see it as unfair?
I see that the announcement that the government made last Thursday is being actual creating equity in the Federation on the national programs that we have.
What do you think about...
The next election will be fought over the carbon tax?
I can't predict what the next election is necessarily going to be fought over. What I advocated for as an Atlantic Member of Parliament and as someone representing a rural riding was to create better national equity in our programs, and that is exactly what the government did. The reality is home heating oil. I want us to focus on that question. Yes, it is acute in Atlantic Canada, but make no mistake, this is a national program that the government launched back in the fall of 2022, specific to help about 1 million Canadian households make a transition. These folks, if they have the means to transition off, would be doing so right now because they are paying in excess of 4 times what the rate of natural gas is and other sources. And that is exactly why we launched the program. And that's exactly why we created a targeted program to help Canadians. Will it benefit Atlantic Canada? Absolutely. And we fought for that as a caucus, but it benefits Ontario, it benefits Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. This is a true national program, and we're going after the actual source that is 4 times more expensive to heat your home and the worst polluting source of energy in the country.
What do you think about Minister Hutchings' comments on Sunday? Do you think
I think they were unfortunate. I think I'll let Minister Hutchings speak for herself. But what I can say is, yes, of course, as an Atlantic caucus, this is a really acute issue. But we drove a national policy change that is going to make a difference across the country. This matters in rural Ontario. The rural rebate matters in rural Manitoba, Saskatchewan. And I'm proud that the fact that the government actually made adjustments to better reflect the national reality that is out there. And that may not always be understood here on Parliament Hill, here necessarily in the national region, but I'm here to tell you, in rural and regional Canada, people will take notice that this is an important adjustment, and it's based on equity of people in the country who are the most vulnerable, those 1 million households. Yes, about 250,000 of them exist in Atlantic Canada, but 750,000 exist outside the region. They benefit from this too.
Why do you think Mrs. Hutchinson's comments were unfortunate? Do you think she should have?
Because I think at the end of the day, they characterized it as this was only Atlantic specific, that this was not a national program, that it was driven just on pure policy. No, this is good public policy. It matters across the country. I won't apologize for advocating for changes that make a difference for my region. But at the end of the day, what I want people and what I want Canadians to know is that what was announced last Thursday matters outside of Atlantic Canada too. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to ask ourselves, do the 266,000 households in Ontario who are extremely vulnerable, who exist primarily in northern and rural Ontario, do they not matter? I think they do. My question to Doug Ford is, we've launched a pilot program to actually try to help people make a transition. Is he interested in helping those 266,000 households? Is Scott Moe interested in helping about 12,000 households, primarily in rural and northern Saskatchewan, make a transition because they are trapped and they're extremely vulnerable? If you have the money, if you are using home heating in this country, and you have the money, you would be insane not to make a transition. It is 4 times. The price between natural gas and home heating oil is 4 times more expensive. So there is clear evidence of why you make a change. Why people maybe haven't is because many don't actually have the money to make that transition themselves. That's exactly why the government announced the program.
Mr. Bloch, Pierre Poilievre tells a narrative that he's responsible for this flip-flop, that because of the fact that he was in the Nova Scotia area, Atlantic MPs started beating down the doors of the Prime Minister, pressuring him to do this tax break for Atlantic Canadians. Do you agree with that narrative? Were you feeling the heat from Mr. Poilievre?
No. At the end of the day, if you go back and look at the Hansard record and you look at what I've said publicly, far beyond July 1st, 2023, I was looking at the national program and saying I felt there had to be changes on the basis of equity. So this, you don't just change a national program in 3 days because the leader of the official opposition is in a region. You change a policy because it's the right thing to do on an equity basis across the country. Is this acute in Atlantic Canada? Absolutely. I'm not going to apologize for the fact that we've made a change that makes a difference for our part of the country, but it makes a difference across the country. It's a national question, and I'm very proud of the fact that members in our caucus helped drive that significant policy change that is going to make a difference for people in Atlantic Canada. It's going to make a difference for for people in rural Ontario, in rural Saskatchewan, in rural Manitoba, and particularly those million Canadian households who are extremely vulnerable. And we want to help make a transition off heating oil because it's extremely inefficient to heat your home that way, and it's extremely expensive.
People are suffering who also use natural gas, who use electric heat in terms of affordability. Should those tax breaks be extended to all people, regardless of the type of home heating they're on?
Natural gas is one of the most cost-effective ways to heat your home in the country. I can appreciate that there's sentiment that is being brought in, but again, I have 70%. Here's another thing that I want folks to understand at home. I have 70% of my own constituents when I go home and talk to that I'm not asking and I'm not telling them that they're going to get an exemption on their home heating. This was a very specific focus on heating oil and people that are vulnerable and Canadians that are vulnerable. It is acute in Atlantic Canada, but I will tell my folks at home in Nova Scotia that are using natural gas who are paying half the price of someone on heating oil in Nova Scotia that at the end of the day, there's other federal programs should they choose to want to help make a transition or reduce their reliance on natural gas, but they are actually in a very much more affordable position than these million very vulnerable Canadians that we created a national program to help.
Would Nova Scotians like to see an increase in immigration numbers?
Look, that's a question for Nova Scotians. I'm very proud of the fact that we've moved the needle in terms of welcoming new Canadians and new Nova Scotians. It's really a part of our social fabric, and I'm really proud of it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the finance ministers from across Canada for agreeing to join me on Friday in a virtual meeting, a virtual special meeting, where we're going to talk about the CPP. A secure and dignified retirement is so important for every single Canadian. It's the guarantee that our seniors have, and it's the guarantee that all of us have for when we eventually retire. And that's why it's really important that every province, every territory be brought together so we can discuss this cornerstone issue together. That's what we're going to do on Friday. I look forward to the conversation. Une retraite sécure et digne est fondamentale pour chaque Canadien et Canadienne. C'est un enjeu important pour chacun de nous et c'est un enjeu qui aura des implications pour chaque Canadien et Canadienne. Pour cette raison, je voudrais remercier tous les ministres des Finances de toutes les provinces, de tous les territoires pour leur participation ce vendredi. C'est une conversation importante et c'est important d'inclure les représentants de tout notre pays.
Est-ce que
merci.
vous êtes, Mme Freeland, contre le fait que l'Alberta quitte le régime de pension du Canada ou contre le coût qu'ils ont mis sur la table? Est-ce que vous êtes prête à dire oui si le coût est plus raisonnable?
C'est important d'être clair des provisions de la loi. Et selon la loi, l'Alberta a le droit de quitter le régime. Mais c'est aussi le cas qu'on doit avoir une conversation avec toutes les provinces et tous les territoires parce qu'on doit comprendre les conséquences d'une telle décision. C'est la première fois qu'une province a soulevé cette question du moment de la création du régime. Et le point de vue du fédéral est qu'une telle décision ne sera pas dans l'intérêt de tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes et qu'une telle décision n'est pas dans l'intérêt des Albertains. Et je veux souligner aussi, comme j'ai fait hier, que les Albertains lui-même ont soulevé leur voix, ont soulevé des questions concernant ce plan. Par exemple, le Chambre du commerce du Calgary a soulevé les dangers pour les Albertains eux-mêmes de cette proposition. Le Conseil des syndicats de l'Alberta, j'ai parlé avec leur chef, Guillaume McGowan, à Calgary, il y a une semaine. Il et son organisation ont aussi soulevé tous les dangers Mais pour moi,
peu importe la formule.
Je veux souligner, c'est le droit de chaque province de quitter le plan. On est clair concernant cela. Mais on doit aussi avoir une conversation basée sur les faits. Et c'est important que chaque province, chaque territoire soit représenté et aura une voix dans cette conversation, parce que c'est une possibilité qui aura des implications pour chaque Canadien, pour chaque Canadienne. Merci beaucoup.
Is it your hope that...
Just here to re-ask David's questions. Is there any chance that the design decision for the National Afghan War Monument would be revisited?
We were very clear, or I was very clear yesterday during my testimony at the ACVA committee, indicating that we've heard over 12,000 respondents to our survey, to our questionnaire, and it was very clear that the majority of individuals who had responded to the survey have indicated that the concept, the Stimson design, was the concept that they appreciated the most, and we'll be moving forward with that concept.
The lead designer of the winning design was an Indigenous person. Did that factor in the government's decision to override the jury's selection?
No, once again, I first of all want to thank the jury for the work that they've done, but for us it was very important to make sure that the voices of veterans was heard, and that is why that we're moving forward with this concept. Over 12,000 Canadians responded. A large majority of those were veterans, and when we saw the results, it was just really important that we made sure that their request and their vision was respected, and that was for the concept, the Stimson design.
And is there any way to have this built before 2027? It seems like a long way off.
Well, we were very eager to get it going. We've certainly recognized that the contract has been signed with the National Commission. And again, the design, the building of the monument will be starting in the very near future, because we certainly want to get it done.
And if you can just explain why there was another survey, done when there's already a jury deciding?
Sure. Well, through Veterans Affairs Canada, when we put in place a monument or create a monument, we always have a jury that helps in the process, but also we want to hear from stakeholders and veterans, and that's a very normal part of the process. What was unusual this time, though, was that usually the jury and the survey results are very much the same, but this time around it was different, that we had really opposing points of view, if you will. So for us, again, as the minister responsible for Veterans Affairs, it was really important for me to make sure that we respected the wishes of the veterans, the majority of people who had responded to the survey, and that is why they were moving forward with the Stimson concept. Thank you so much. Yeah.
As a former Veterans Affairs Minister, I know you're so closely tied to working with veterans. Afghanistan National Monument. A little controversy about the design, but more importantly, the pace of when it's going to be constructed. I don't know if this is something that's coming to Cabinet. If you have some thoughts about it.
No, I don't know. I'll look into it. I'm not aware of the subject.
Okay. I just thought.
What happened?
Well, your government, Minister Rodriguez, ran a competition for the design.
Yeah.
A jury picked the winner.
Yeah.
The winner was a Montreal firm.
Yeah.
Government subsequently decided to do a survey, hired Leger, polled 15,000 people, including 3,000 veterans. Veterans picked another design. Happened to have a lot more Indigenous veterans on that design. Montreal firm's pretty annoyed, and so were Quebec MPs. And the bigger picture, it was 2014 when Harper said he'd build a monument, and it's not going to be 2027 until we build the damn thing. It's Veterans Week. This is
Yeah, no. Let me bone up.
Are you Beaumont Hamelling it somewhere? Do you do that?
No, I've been.
Isn't there special ceremonies though in St. John's?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We do stuff in St. John's. I'm home all the time. Right. Would say, and then July 1st, of course.
July 1st is
Beaumont
the day.
is the day. Yeah. No, never miss it.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
Should we maintain them as will be announced? Will you more?
Oh God, I've talked enough on other matters. I'll just leave that to colleagues, I think, who probably are more germane to the issue.
Regan, saying this is going to be a carbon tax election, but that's going to be the deciding issue for the next election. What do you think about that?
I can think of a million and one things that could come between now and the next election, so too early to call it yet.
Now you can have the Supreme Court basically saying that the price of food.
About yesterday's Veterans Affairs Committee meeting. Sure. This whole issue around the design, it sounds like a Montreal firm feels they were snubbed, and as you know, when Quebecers feel that they were snubbed by the federal government, that's not a good thing. Do you think the decision should be reopened?
No, I think, look, the decision was it's to commemorate the veterans' contribution. There's 4,000 Canadian veterans that served in Afghanistan, 158 plus soldiers died, 7 civilians died. a survey, a consultation was done with them, where they overwhelmingly, including from Montreal, all said that it should be the design that was now awarded. So that's what the minister went with, and I think that's what we'll have.
And what about the fact we won't see this thing until 2027? Would you like to see somebody, it's 2023, can we do something faster, quicker?
I'll work on it and see what we can do with that.
Okay, thanks for your time.
I would answer your question, but I would prefer to get a little briefing before. I don't feel that I will be able to be technical enough to respond to you.
Well, this is a pretty general question, but let's give it a try. Carousel tax credits, how big an issue are they for the CRA and as minister for you?
Okay, seriously, Simon will just stay in contact with you and I'll get back to you, okay? But I need to look at it.
We've had some difficulty getting a yes to our interview request.
I say yes, okay? I say yes, we'll do it. But let me get ready for that.
That's very
good. General Danny Fortin has posted a few comments on his LinkedIn today saying about the military and saying there needs to be improvements, that there just wasn't a place for him. What do you say to people who have, someone like Danny Fortin has been in his position and wasn't able to get back into his job after clearing his name?
First of all, there's been a settlement with General Fortin, so I can't really comment on those circumstances, but I would take the opportunity to thank him for his service.
Thank you. Those sort of picketed by protesters, can you just give me a sense of what it was like for your staff, and did you have some communication with them?
Yeah, so of course they were rattled by it. There's 10 people that got into the office. They came in as...
Oh, they were actually inside the office?
Yes. They came in as wanting to know information about Canada summer jobs, and that was the Trojan horse they used to get in. Our staff was wanting to serve them, and then things went from there. But it was loud but peaceful, and eventually the Gulf Police Services helped move things along so that they could get to their cars at the end of the day. And
are you going to have to subsequently take some steps, maybe to vet people on the way in?
Yes, exactly. We're going to be asking for appointments only for the next little while, and then asking for people to identify themselves when they come in.
Okay, cool. I'm asking a few, as you know, there's
Great.
a few MPs
Yes,
in the same boat. So
yeah, I mean, we also reached out to the other tenants in the building who said...
Where's the building? Where's your office?
It's across from the train station where the Chamber of Commerce is. Yeah.
Okay. Right
Go
downtown.
figure. And I was in the Chamber of Commerce, so go figure. But the other tenants said, well, peaceful protest is all part of democracy. So they were actually very understanding, which was also good. But it did disrupt our building for an afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks
very much.
$1,5 milliard de dollars pour le tramway de Québec. Est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral va embarquer là-dedans?
Je vais commencer par dire que le gouvernement canadien est en appui au projet depuis le début. C'est un appui qui se continue au cours des prochaines années, pour deux raisons. La première, c'est qu'il y a un financement de 4 milliards déjà sécurisé avec le gouvernement du Québec. La deuxième raison, c'est que dans à peu près 2 ans maintenant, donc en 2026, il va y avoir un financement récurrent, annuel, additionnel de 3 milliards de dollars du gouvernement canadien. Ceci étant dit, ces financements sont importants parce que la Ville de Québec est la seule ville de taille comparable à ne pas avoir de réseau de transport collectif moderne au pays. Et c'est quelque chose dont on doit rattraper le retard. Et le fait que le gouvernement du Québec et le gouvernement canadien aient fait preuve au cours des dernières années de leadership et de partenariat me donne espoir pour la suite.
Donc vous avez encore espoir que ça se concrétise, malgré les délais, malgré la facture qui a explosé. On parlait de 3, quelque chose milliards, on est rendu à plus de 8 maintenant.
Bien, le mot délai est effectivement un mot important parce que tout délai apporte évidemment et inévitablement des coûts additionnels. C'est pour ça qu'il faut continuer d'accélérer les efforts de rattrapage de la Ville de Québec par rapport aux autres villes au pays. Et j'ai confiance qu'on va continuer à le faire avec le leadership et le partenariat du gouvernement du Québec et de la Ville de Québec.
Comment vous pouvez continuer sur la base de négociations qui sont déjà entamées alors que la facture va être au moins 2 fois plus élevée?
Bien, tout d'abord, les factures sont plus élevées partout. Tous les projets d'infrastructure...
Ce projet-là, spécifiquement, là, vous avez déjà entamé des négociations qui allaient déjà pas bien. Là, on apprend que ça va coûter 2 fois plus. Comment vous pouvez être optimiste?
Bien, ce sont des négociations qu'on observe partout. Tous les projets d'infrastructure partout au pays et dans le monde subissent les effets dus à l'inflation mondiale. Investir ces milliards de dollars ailleurs qu'à Québec coûterait aussi très cher. Donc, ce serait effectivement essentiellement le même rapport avantage-coût que de prendre cet argent du gouvernement canadien et de l'investir dans d'autres villes au pays. Le problème, c'est que la Ville de Québec est toute seule à ne pas avoir de réseau de transport collectif moderne. Donc, s'il y a un retard qu'on doit rattraper au Canada, c'est bien dans la Ville de Québec.
La pluie populaire risque de décoper, par exemple.
Les gens se demandent effectivement pourquoi ça coûte cher. La première raison, c'est que l'inflation est évidente. En matière d'infrastructure, l'inflation est très significative partout au pays et ailleurs dans le monde. Et la deuxième, c'est que 90% du financement vient de l'extérieur de la région de Québec. C'est normal que les gens de Calgary et de Brossard payent pour le financement d'un réseau de transport structurant à Québec, puisque les gens de Québec payent aussi pour des réseaux de transport ailleurs au pays. À Toronto, à Vancouver, les Québécois, les gens de ma ville, les gens de ma circonscription et de ma ville ont payé pour des réseaux de transport au cours des dernières années. Donc, c'est tout à fait normal que les gens ailleurs du pays contribuent pour 90% du financement du réseau dans la ville de Québec.
Vous ne pensez pas que même à Québec, les gens risquent de dire, ben là, ça n'a plus de bon sens, on le choix.
Bien, on a le choix. Bien, on rattrape le retard où on laisse ces milliards de dollars aller ailleurs au pays, dans des endroits qui se sont déjà beaucoup développés au cours des dernières années.
Merci, monsieur. Today is the deadline for the Pakistani government to force out Afghan nationals. What is the Canadian government doing to help these Afghans stuck in Pakistan?
We've had very strong statements made, and we've had conversations. I've had conversations myself with the High Commissioner from Pakistan to ensure that refugees of all sorts are protected, so there's no danger. And we're also very, very strongly working on the thousands of Afghans who are destined for Canada to be allowed to remain in Pakistan until they can get to Canada. We have assurances from Pakistan that those several thousand people destined for Canada, many of them to be reunited with family in Canada, will be protected in Pakistan, and we expect Pakistan to maintain their word on that.
You have assurances, what is Immigration Canada telling these Afghans to shelter in place in their guest houses and let them know by email if they get arrested? How does that match with assurances?
Well, we've had assurances, but we will also make sure that they are safe. The issue is around documentation, the issue is around knowing who is who, and we have made strong representation to Pakistan that those people should be protected, and we will continue to do that. We'll continue to argue that they are in transit and that they will find a home in Canada. And we've already brought in over 40,000 Afghans in this most recent resettlement. We'll continue to do it.
Do you have a minute? Thanks. An update about what's happening in Gaza right now and the push to get Canadians out.
Sure. My understanding is there are a number of several thousand foreign nationals in Gaza. About 400 Canadians are there. I understand that today a number of maybe up to 400 or 500 got through the Rafah gate and they were able to get out. We're hopeful in the next few days that Canadians will get out as well. We're working very closely with Israel, with Egypt, Qatar, with other countries to make sure that Canadians who are in Gaza get out. I'm hopeful that in the next few days we'll be able to do that.
How is it being determined which nationals are getting out and which ones aren't right now?
I don't know that. I don't know how, though. I think we've had a number of aid workers who have been able to get out. Some UN workers. UN has had a number of casualties, and they're trying to get some of their workers out. And connectivity is a real issue as well, in that I know that there have been reports that a number of Canadians have not had updates. Well, the reality is internet has been cut off. And so the mission in Tel Aviv is constantly reaching out to them, and we're trying to reassure them. And we have been negotiating with a number of partners to get Canadians out. And I am hopeful, very hopeful, that in the next few days we'll see a number of.
The U.S. is officially blaming Hamas for blocking its citizens from getting out of Gaza. Is that what's going on with Canada as well?
I think it's a complex situation. I know that in the first round of people came out either last night or this morning, there weren't Americans, there weren't Canadians. I don't think that is based on I don't have intelligence that is based on some sort of discrimination. I think the reality is there are thousands of people there, and we have two goals. One is to get aid into Gaza, and we're still only getting a trickle of trucks in, and we are pushing hard to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. At the same time, we're trying to get Canadians out. And it's a complex problem. There is a war going on, and that is hard to get people out safely too.
Today is the deadline for the Pakistani government to force out Afghan nationals. What is the Canadian government doing to help these Afghans stuck in Pakistan?
We've had very strong statements made, and we've had conversations. I've had conversations myself with the High Commissioner from Pakistan to ensure that refugees of all sorts are protected, so there's no danger. And we're also very, very strongly working on the thousands of Afghans who are destined for Canada to be allowed to remain in Pakistan until they can get to Canada. We have assurances from Pakistan that those several thousand people destined for Canada, many of them to be reunited with family in Canada, will be protected in Pakistan, and we expect Pakistan to maintain their word on that.
You have assurances, was Immigration Canada telling these Afghans to shelter in place in their guest houses and let them know by email if they get arrested? How does that match with assurances?
Well, we've had assurances, but we will also make sure that they are safe. The issue is around documentation, the issue is around knowing who is who, and we have made strong representation to Pakistan that those people should be protected, and we will continue to do that. We'll continue to argue that they are in transit and that they will find a home in Canada. And we've already brought in over 40,000 Afghans in this most recent resettlement. We'll continue to do it.
Do you have a minute?
Thank you so much.